Ladies and gentlemen, the world's #1 sports and recreation podcast in the world is Cheap Heat. And today in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, we're joined by the physically strong, the physically smart, the physically with bad taste in television, oftentimes, though not always, just oftentimes. And I'm talking about Stat Guy Greg.
My television tastes are diverse. I like to be a well-rounded person.
You are that. Although we have to figure out what's at the upper end of your television that makes it fully diverse. But no, there's something there. We'll get there.
Not too much highbrow, but
no, there's a brow.
The upper end.
Maybe a unibrow.
There are brows.
And also joining us from the great, in quotes, state of Florida, a man who is a champion, literally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. This week, if you've been watching on the WWE Network, you may be calling him by his government name. I feel like everyone's feeling it right now. But we know him as the great Big E of the New Day.
My man. Thank you for having me. By the way, you are clearly a true pro, because I thought you were going to schmooze me a little bit, a little hobnobbing, a little small talk before. As soon as I click the Zoom link, you hit the music. We're in.
That's it.
Respect to you.
Listen, you're a huge star. You're a star. I'm not wasting time.
We don't want to waste your time.
And we have things we have to get to. First and foremost, before we do anything about wrestling or about your life or the 24 that came out last week, tell us the reason that you hit me up and said that you needed to come on the program this week.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. For one, kind of the thing that's really been consuming so much of my attention and my spirit has been our Kickstarter project, Our Heroes Rock. And for me, this stems back to the murder of George Floyd. And for me, I don't remember anything ever hitting me so viscerally, something that felt so profound, a death of someone that I'd never met, that I'd never known. And I kept thinking of this massive, impenetrable system of systemic racism. When you look at inequity, and it's beyond just police brutality, it's housing, it's employment, it just intersects in so many aspects of our culture, of our country. And in many ways, I kind of felt hopeless. But my thought was, if I'm going to sit here and have these conversations with my fellow Black friends and family members, if I'm going to shed these tears, let them not go to waste. Let me do something. Let me use my voice, no matter how big or small it is. Let me say something. And one of the things that we decided to do is I just kind of thought, like, what if we did Schoolhouse Rock, but for Black people, Black figures who don't get enough attention? And so I reached out to my man, Jonathan Davenport, who has designed the New Day gear for 6 years now. He's done an incredible job. He's an incredible artist. And I thought the gear he made, I thought he nailed it. I thought it got a lot of attention, a lot of great attention. And then my buddy Andreas Hale, who's worked as a journalist, he's a writer, he's been an activist, and he hit me up and said, this should be way more than just wrestling gear. And it was really the three of us who put our heads together. And I always say, this project is as much Andreas's as it is Jonathan's, as it is mine, because it's the three of us who really worked hard on this. And so we decided to launch a Kickstarter to fund an animated short. And we felt like the life of Ruby Bridges was one that was so moving and profound. You have this little girl who was born in the same year as Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. So she's only 6 years old in 1960 when she has to integrate a New Orleans school. And to see all the vitriol and anger that a little 6-year-old girl had to deal with, that story is so moving. And I think what's also moving too is you have this one white teacher. There was one teacher who said, I will teach this child. So it was her and it was Ruby in a class for the whole year alone, and they got through it and she learned. And I think it's a powerful message for young Black kids, for non-Black kids as well, that you can stand up, you can do the right thing, that you can be at 6 years old, you can be brave, that you can stand up for what's right. So it's I thought it was an incredibly moving story. But for us, we just kept thinking, man, there are so many stories of people, of important Black artists and activists and politicians that we had never heard of. Maybe we heard of them in college, maybe it was later in life, but like these are fundamental stories. And one of the reasons that we termed the project Our Heroes Rock is because I don't like that Black history is just shoved into February and we have MLK and Rosa Parks and slavery and we move on. We are so much more than that. And we should honor those people, but there's so many other stories that need to be told. So we want to use science fiction, animation, and hip hop to tell all those stories. And man, we got Rhapsody. We got Rhapsody, who is incredible, 2-time Grammy nominee for this Kickstarter and for this project. So I'm beyond excited.
Who else's stories are you hoping to tell?
Man, there's so many. I think of James Baldwin. I think of Bass Reeves. I don't know if you've seen Judas and the Black Messiah. I love that film. You think of Fred Hampton, and too often the Black Panthers are vilified, but Fred Hampton was killed at 21, and he helped install a free breakfast program so that kids could get free breakfast. You know, it's a program that we still see decades later in schools. So you think of a man like that who was cut down at 21, all the good that he would have done, not only for his community, but for the world. There are so many different
and a man whose story has been told, like, you know, when you're growing up, my age, 41 years old, growing up white in America, there is no education about the Black Panthers. And if you know anything, you think that they were trouble. That's what you're taught. And people people don't want to admit that right now. Everyone's scared to say what their real childhood was, because everyone's like, if you weren't some warrior who knew at 8 years old what the right thing to do was and didn't storm out of the classroom, you're complicit. But it's like, I'm telling you guys the truth. You grow up white in this country, you think the Black Panthers are like kind of violent and bad. And then you get older and you're like, wait a second. The people feeding us this garbage were the same people who were trying to stop them. What the hell's going on here? And I was really affected by Judas and the Black Messiah in that regard. Like, I really was. So when you mention stories like Fred Hampton, there's so many stories who not only haven't been told, but if they've been told inaccurately. So
exactly.
That's amazing, man. That's really cool. So what can people do? What can the Cheap Heat audience do to go support and make this happen right now?
Well, right now, our Kickstarter is still live. We have 30-something days. But anyways, the Kickstarter will culminate right after WrestleMania, I believe April 12th. But you can go to ourheroesrock.org. That'll take you directly to our Kickstarter, and you can back us. And it's not just donations. You know, we have cool things like there are pins and shirts. We got some really cool collabs that we're going to be announcing very, very soon. But you know, there's a whole reward tier as well. So you get something as well for supporting our project. But again, go to ourheroesrock.org. We have a project video, a long explanation, and it really shows you too. And I want people to know too, this is not meant to be heavy and pedantic. For that age group, we're making this fun and engaging. And you look at the animation, it's colorful, it's vibrant. I liken it to applesauce. You know, back in the day when my parents had to give me medicine or vitamins, they would crush up the medicine or vitamins and they would put it in the applesauce and mix it all in. And you'd have this delicious applesauce without even really knowing the kind of nutrients you got from it. And that's what I hope that this short film will do the same, honestly. Will be that entertainment, it'll engage you, and you'll walk away and, I got this jingle in my head that Rhapsody just rapped. And now I know all these facts about Ruby Bridges. That's incredible, and I want more. So that's our hope.
Yeah. This is awesome, man. You know, by the way, Biggie, he's not here today. He has a meeting at his agency. You should talk to Dipperstein too and see if he can be of any use for you guys and help in trying to push this around Hollywood circles. Because this is
not a bad idea.
This is a very, very cool thing that I think has a lot of potential to not only be educational and nice and all the lovely, wonderful things about it, but also successful. You know, I think it could just be damn good, entertaining content on top of that.
Yeah.
And
I think the important thing too is like you said, our heroes rock, because like Black history is American history. We're all Americans. So this is our history. It's not a thing just for one group or like just to be held to one time a year. This is for everybody all the time. It's such a good point, SGG. And also, like, you know, every time we think about things that are important and we always have a tendency to go, and it's so important for Black kids to see it. Every time we say that, it is always as important for white kids to see it. I always felt that way about President Obama. Like, we were always like, man, it's so important that Black kids can see a Black president. No. It's important that white kids see a Black president. That's also, it's equally important, because the future can't change with just all the Black kids being aware. In fact, Black people are already keenly aware of racism. Right. We need white people to be keenly aware of racism. So I love that this content could reach so many people and everybody could be impacted by it. That's tremendous work, E.
Well, thanks, man. It's something that I feel now. I'm in the stage of my life where it just really hit me, especially last year. I think with the pandemic, I had more time to think, and I feel like I need to do more to give back. And this is me trying to do that, to give back. And I've been incredibly. We're already at almost $100,000. We've already reached our goal. But the way Kickstarter works, it's all or nothing, and 3D animation is expensive. But to do this the right way, we want to keep going. So we have a stretch goal, and right now that's at 100 grand, and then we'll be able to announce our producer and keep going from there. But please, I feel like if you hear it, if you hear me talking, you get an idea of it. But if you go to ourheroesrock.org and really get to see it and get to see it kind of like starting to come to life, it's very engaging. So please check it out.
Yeah, it's easy. If you just Google Our Heroes Rock, the Kickstarter comes right up, and they're a few grand short of the 100 right now. I would hope right now our listeners could give you a couple hundred people to jump on there and get you over the top.
Right now, your co-host is gonna hit him up and donate something in the pot to try and get him to that goal.
Yo, if you see, I want you to know, Biggie, if you see a $5
Hey, we'll take whatever we can get. There's no judgment. Just,
no, I'm about to give
what you can.
I'm about to give one right now.
Smart. I got to go Teacher's Aid or better. I can't waste this education. I got to go Teacher's Aid or better.
Teacher's Aid or better? There you go. Wait, Teacher's Aid, $40 or more. Good for you, SGG.
Teacher's Aid or better. I am still physically cheap too.
No, you are the physically.
I am the penny pincher.
I'm gonna go.
I'm with you, man.
I'm gonna go. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go vice principal right here. Because I had so many people buy my ridiculous 24/7 championship shirt. The least I can do is turn that money around to a cause that is worthy. So I'm gonna do that right now, and I hope everyone will do the same. Also, Biggie, we've spent a long time talking to not cover the fact that you've also become Intercontinental Champion since we last talked.
That is true. For the second time. A lot of people forget about the first time. But
that was a long time.
It was 7 years, I think, 7 years ago. But yeah, it's been cool. I mean, the one thing is it's just, I feel like the crowd, as you know, the people, that's your barometer. They tell you like, oh, this run is hot. I'm with it. Mm-hmm. And so much of the magic of Kofi's run was the crowd reaction. And that's one of the things that, I wish I had is we don't have that now. But the dope thing is Tampa's my hometown. We'll be at Raymond James. We'll have people there for the first time in over a year. We'll have
How excited are you about anyone being there?
It's dope, man. It's dope to get that real, authentic reaction. That's what we want. That's the dream. So I'm hyped for that, and to be in my hometown, man. Like my high school all-star game was at Raymond James.
Wow.
Like I played. We had a bowl game when I was at Iowa at Raymond James. Like this is my city. I still live like I'm 30 minutes down the road. So it's just dope, even though it's not quite the same. We're not back to normal, but it's still a massive step up. So I'm excited about it, man. And I feel like right now, nothing's set in stone, but I got a damn good foil in Apollo and seeing him step up, man.
How do you feel about this new Apollo we're seeing?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is he like your least favorite Nigerian now? Because you're cool with Kaz, you're cool with
Wale. I started realizing I got a lot of love for Nigerians too. I'm a big fan of like Israel Adesanya too, despite his setback. Seeing Kamaru Usman, Nigerians have been killing it lately.
Young Jordan over in WWE.
Oh yeah, he is. That's right. Yep. But yeah, man, it's I'll say despite our beef, I gotta say, tip of the hat to him for stepping his game up. He's a guy who could have easily just kind of been happy to be there, and you kind of see a slow decline, and then you don't see him on TV anymore, and he's just kind of gone. Like, he put the onus on himself to step up. And in this business, man, you want to face the best. It's iron sharpens iron. So I want to see guys be at their very best. I want to see them bring it. I want to see them like reinventing themselves. I want to see people at their best. And he's a guy who always had the look. He always had, he looked like $1 million. He moved, he reminds me in a different way, not quite like Cesaro, but in the same way, like you see him do lucha stuff and strength stuff, like in a similar vein. Like, Apollo can do moonsaults, beautiful moonsaults, effortlessly. The stuff he does in the ring, you expect a guy 50 pounds lighter than him to do. And then he'll show you his strength too. So he's such a cool and unique blend, I think, of like kind of what a modern day wrestler is. So it's cool to see him start to grow as a personality.
When I saw him, when I turned on the TV the other day and I heard him and was like, what the hell's going on? And who are these two people standing behind him? What's happening here? You know, my natural reaction, I think we all have a tendency in wrestling to be like, wait a second, how's this going to work? Especially if it's something like related to being African. We all have a little bit of a side eye of like, let's see how this goes. And then I took a moment, instead of being judgmental about it, was like, you know what? If I'm being realistic, we've always all thought Apollo Crews has been talented and an awesome athlete. We've been waiting for a character, something that jumped off the page and you could sink your teeth into. So before being overly judgmental, I was like, let me see, because my one complaint has probably been, who is Apollo Crews? And maybe this is a way for us to be able to sink our teeth in. SGG, what did you think? You and I haven't even discussed Apollo Crews' the new version of Apollo Crews yet.
No, yeah, I loved it. I mean, you know, apologies to you, E, right now. When he dropped those steel steps on your head, someone not named Peter came on the show and said you might have earned it a little bit. So I was a big fan
that
of
person who said that. Oh, it was you, SUG.
No, I mean, it could have been Dip too, but
it was kind of both of you, but it was really you.
But no, I am really a fan of this new Apollo Crews, because I think, like you said, we've been waiting for a character, and for him to just completely lean in to his culture and tap into that and come out with the armed guard and flip the accent back and say, I'm going home with it. Like, I think it's all perfect. I know some people were like you, a little bit reserved, especially with the accent, but I mean, if he's going to lean into it, he has to.
Yeah.
Because I mean, all of us former immigrants, we could do our parents' accent like it's nothing. And
right. And it's interesting too, man. I feel like, and I get people's sensitivities too, because I watch it and I often think, where's the line? What's offensive? But you know, and it's the same thing too. I think back to when people want to think of the Black experience as this singular thing. It's not, because I have Caribbean parents, and there are certain elements that, you know, there's maybe some similarities, but I don't know what the line is. So I'll reach out. You know, I reached out to to Kaz, and I said, hey man, like, how do you feel about this? What are your thoughts on this? Where's the line?
I hate Kaz too.
Yeah, and I hate being like, hey, you're my Nigerian expert here. What do you think about this? But you know, without putting his business out there, he felt like, hey, this is working. He didn't have a problem with it, and that's where I see where people would be kind of upset with it. But if you don't have those experiences, if you're not Nigerian or Nigerian American, for me, like, I have to reach out to learn more to understand what the line is. So more than anything, I'm just glad that he's getting that opportunity. He's getting that limelight, because he's a guy who, like, you don't know. He's a guy who maybe a year ago who could have been let go quietly, and it's what could have been with him. And I'm so glad that he's now beyond that what could have been stage. You know, he's at a point where he's showing, I deserve to be here, because you don't see a packaging like that for a guy who's just going to be off TV in a week or two. You don't have, you know what I mean? Like, that
time now. You're gonna get some time now.
Exactly. And so I'm excited to see where it goes. And like I said, man, I want the best programs. I want to face the guys who have some momentum, and it's good to see him with that.
So there's a lot of talk. And by the way, also, what a great place in time it is that we can be worried that it's offensive. We have to ask, is it offensive if they do a Nigerian thing with someone who's actually of Nigerian descent? Do you realize how huge an improvement this is? I mean, there was a time in this business when a large white man came out and he was African all of a sudden. So this is, hey, we're small baby steps about the way we view the world. This is positive.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there. But what about your character, E? I mean, like, you and I don't really talk about this very often, but in terms of wrestling, that is a conversation about, you know, what does Big E need to do to be at a championship level, solo championship level, world champion level versus tag team championship level? And is it something different? You know, like, do you did that thing on the air on an episode of Talking Smack, I believe, where you and The Miz had that sort of fun dialogue about your character, in which it was sort of blending behind the scenes and real life conversation.
Yeah.
But I wonder about it too, because I'm a huge fan of what you do in the New Day, and me and SUG have often disagreed. We've disagreed about this all the time. I favor a New Day breakup at some point, and he does not. And I'm like, I want to see the changes that happen to characters when things like that happen. But do you need any sort of change like that, or can you remain Biggie of the New Day and still just go out on your own and be WWE champion?
To me, there will be changes, but I almost feel it's got to like naturally evolve. Like, I don't think I need a drastic makeover. I don't think it needs to be something like what Apollo did, where it's now like, here's a brand new gimmick. To me, it's just kind of
for us to toy around with what that would look like, though.
Well, I got a lot of shenanigans in my bag. I don't know if it'll be any good, but I'll hit you with some shenanigans. I feel you with when we first heard we were breaking up, I was not a fan of it because I think in many of the ways that Kofi was able to become a world champion and still have the group be intact, where we could have kind of our separate stories, I thought that was very possible. But this is the hand we're dealt. So for me, it was a matter of still keeping the things that made me special, but adding some determination. So I still want to be myself. I still want to make people laugh. I still want to be frivolous at times. But now I'm here to do something, and I'm here to cement a legacy. That's why I'm here. That is why I'm on my own right now. And I feel like I do a disservice to Kofi and Woods giving me their blessing if I just went to SmackDown just to kind of be a guy on the roster or just hold a title and not elevate that title. So for me, that's an important thing, is making that title feel special. And I don't think it's a matter of me doing anything drastic. In much the same way where people, around the Miz time, when he had that conversation with Miz, and he talked about me being more serious. And I said, it was that same night, I think, where I got in Sheamus's ass. And I told him, like, you're telling me I need to be more serious. I just showed you a level that 98% of the people on this roster have never showed. Like, I showed you that when it's time, when you cross me, I'm gonna bust your ass. Like, that's what I'm about to do. So for me, it's a matter of feeling the moment and meeting the energy of the moment or what that moment calls for. I don't think it needs to be any drastic changes. And maybe we'll get in a month or two and I'll feel like, hey, maybe I do need to really switch something up. But I feel like, man, I've been signed with this company since August of 2009. If I don't have a feel for this by now, if I don't have an understanding of my character or my direction or what feels off by now, I don't need to be here. So trust in me, man. Let me take the ball and let me run with it. It's also too, like, you talk about guys just like, what do you need to do? Oftentimes it's just about, just give me that ball, man. Just open the door, man. Just let me go. That's how I feel. I don't feel like I'm deficient in any way that I need to add something or I'm missing something or I need a wholesale change. I just think for me, it's being, oftentimes too, we have TV, and when you're given a 3-minute seg, you do the best you can with that. But it's often hard to look like the guy when you're given 3 minutes and your entrance is not on TV and you come out and you have to rush what you do. But if you give me that opportunity and you have the 8 minutes or the 10 minutes to really tell that story, to really look like a star, yeah, then you're made, And it's such an interesting business too, because we're shown time and time again, one great night of booking can change everything. Same thing like Kofi had that one gauntlet match.
Yep.
And he went from being a guy that we all loved, and yeah, Kofi, he's that utility guy.
So like, I could see him winning this whole thing.
Just like that in one night. And we all knew how good he was. We all knew how talented he was. We all knew his story. But one great night in front of a hot crowd who's receptive to it.
Yep.
And it was on.
And you know what? And that's I think where my interest in the breakup comes from. Because my default is, what's the easiest way that I could foresee it happening? And right. So for me, I thought whoever would have been the person to turn on the rest, you instantly, because you guys are so beloved, it's such a that it's almost a cheap way of doing it.
It is cheap.
Honestly, it is a cheap way of doing it because the crowd's going to react. But
right.
There are these moments we have in history where a turn is so impactful. I mean, I always bring this up, but I mean, all Andre the Giant had to do was walk out next to Bobby Heenan. That's it. And you went, oh my God. Now, it was a simpler time. And so these days, getting the crowd to go on that journey requires something different.
I mean, they went to that same well with Roman, though. He showed up next to Paul Heyman, and
they did.
Instantly everybody knew this was not the guy that we hated and then grew to love and then now have to hate again.
You're 100% right. That was, and they didn't lean into it quite the same way, but you're right. It was that sitting next to each other that changed everything as it is. How excited would you be very excited to have a main event, a Universal Championship storyline with Roman?
I mean, that's the one. Like, if I had to pick out any storyline or any title, or that's the guy, whether people want him to be the guy or not. And I feel like most people now are on board with him being the guy. Yeah. I feel like it's all pretty universal there. But yeah, if I was to pick anyone, he would be the one. But I also, as much as it would have been dope to have done it this year, I also don't mind earning it. I think one of the problems that we sometimes get into is you see guys get called up. And not that I've been in this position, because it's kind of odd to make that comparison after 8 years on the main roster. But you see guys get these opportunities and they get called up and they go straight for a title and then they don't get it. And it's now what? They're right in that world title picture. And I don't want to name names because I'm not disparaging them per se, but it feels like a disappointment moving forward.
I didn't want you to get it now. I thought this. I think Greg, did we talk about it?
Yeah.
I think I said on the show, I was like, man, if Big E were to get it now, he's not going to get the title. So he's going to end up jumping into it for a second. It lasts for 3 weeks, maybe one pay-per-view, as opposed to if you wait a year and you're more even solidified as a solo star, maybe have a great IC title run. And then when it comes around, it could last and you could win. You know what I'm saying? So as a fan, I didn't think it would have been a thrill in the moment, but you don't want to be filler. You want this thing to really mean something.
No, of course, too. And I think it could also be hard, man, as a babyface, because I think as a fan, I want to see the chase. I want to see a guy overcome, especially for that title, for a world title. I want to see a guy overcome and have, even as a bigger babyface, a guy who's a bit of a powerhouse, I want to see that guy have to overcome something to have that title run feel earned. I think it's a lot easier for heels to have those long title runs and be dominant and have the shenanigans. But as a babyface, it only really works when it's just kind of you, when it's just you alone. That's why we had to, when Kofi had the world title, it was this balance of us still interacting with him, but not being the guys to save him, because then you lose the luster of him being a world champion if he's always having to lean on his friends. But you can do that as heels. You can have your Paul Heyman, you can have Jay, you can have all these little things around you helping to create this mystique and also helping to get you wins, helping to, take the bumps for you. And it's just different as a babyface. And it can be a lot harder, I think.
What's the most you've ever tried to explain this to like a complete non-wrestling person? Like, do you ever go on a date or anything or talk to someone who literally has no sort of knowledge of it, and you're trying to explain this level of nuance of this world, and it's like, I don't even know where to start?
No, I don't even try. I don't like talking about wrestling to women. I think it's, I like the distance from.
But don't they ask sometimes if they're like, oh, I want to see you on TV?
They do, and I'll do my best to like downplay it, to tell them not to watch. They do, but I do my best to not engage. But it is difficult because these are things that I know the two of you will understand. But even a very casual fan, like my real good buddies that I went to school with, I couldn't explain all these nuances to them. They wouldn't understand in the same way.
There's a special level of nerdiness that we.
But I mean, yeah, it's true. With the crowd coming back, though, you don't want like panties raining on you too, Big E.
Ooh,
like,
a good question.
Is
that a new gimmick for him? The panty raider?
Could be.
Good Lord. It depends on what kind of panties, I suppose, and like how musty they are. Because I don't want you, especially like Mania. If we have Mania and we got people out there for 6-7 hours in the hot sun throwing their dusty ass drawers at me, that's not what I need. I don't need that in my life.
You gotta come out right night one, like right early in the show.
Real early.
Yeah.
Hit out some Febreze.
I don't know if during COVID the panty throwing is a move right now because it lands short. That's a tough thing. Now I was watching the 24. It's so interesting watching a documentary about someone who you're friends with, but you don't know every aspect of. You and I've never talked about your football career. We've never really even talked about FCW. Like we talk about like hip hop and what's going on in your life right at this minute.
Right.
So it was very interesting to learn all these things about you. SGG, we always talk about what a great guy Big E is. You got to watch the doc. Turns out he's a terrible guy.
I saw.
He's a terrible guy. I was shocked they did a feature all about him fighting people for no reason. No, but you're exactly the person that I think myself and everybody knows you to be. But it was cool getting to see, like, I really didn't understand sort of how difficult the end of football must have been for you. And, obviously you're not the only guy like that. I'm curious, do you have conversations with the Romans and the Baron Corbins and the people who have been to different levels of football? There's so many. I mean, it goes back to JBL, Mark Henry. I mean, so many people made it to some degree in football. Do you guys ever talk about that? And do you ever still think about football, or is that sort of pain completely been washed away?
So I don't actually talk to those guys about their football careers much. It'll come up from time to time. So it's interesting to look back, man. When I started in FCW, it was a stigma. There was a stigma attached to being a former football player because those guys tended to not really, they didn't grow up in the business. They didn't always want to do this. And so many of the guys had worked for, 10 years before they even got signed to WWE. So I didn't like talking about it. And for me too, I was a failed football player. So I didn't have anything to truly be proud of, in my opinion. If you look at Sabby, who started for the Bucks, like that's a guy, if you start for an NFL team for a few years, feel free to talk about your NFL days. But for me, I just didn't really talk about it. But one of the things that I have talked about is some of the guys that I played ball with in Iowa, and there are varying degrees of success. Some guys who didn't even finish up at Iowa. And then I talked to some buddies of mine who played several years in the league. And one of the things that I don't think we talk about enough with athletes is the amount of depression and just mental illness. Like, people really struggle because when you're an athlete, and in many different pursuits, but when you're an athlete, you spend and devote so much of your life to your craft. Even when you're not doing it, you're recovering, or you're stretching, or you're watching film, or you're in your playbook, and that's your identity. And it consumes so much of who you are. So I went from doing, we would all laugh because the NCAA limit, we'd have to sign something that we only had 20 hours of football activities a week because that was the mandate. You couldn't do any more. And we all like calculated. It was more like 40 hours of football activities when you added everything up. But when I went from that and my full class schedule and rehab, and that was just over, and I had all this free time, and I didn't have the same connection with my teammates. It was hard, man. It was very, very hard. And I've talked to, I didn't realize so many of us just kind of suffer in silence.
And I can't imagine the fact that you had to do the ACL thing once and you work all the way back from it to have it happen again. I can't imagine how frustrating that is. I thought the same thing a couple of years ago. It happened to, I think, Tegan Knox in NXT.
Yeah.
These moments when people work so hard, 6 months to get back, and then boom, it happens again. I mean, that mental wear and tear must be brutal, man.
It's awful.
No, I was going to say too, you just talked about the 40 hours of football activity, just not having your boys around for that amount of time too. You must feel so isolated.
That's the thing too, man. People don't talk, the locker room is, I think, what I missed almost as much as playing, maybe more than playing, is because those are your guys, man. Those are it's a real brotherhood. And similarly in wrestling too, when you're on the road as much as we used to be, is there's that bond and brotherhood. And one of the things that really saved me, and I haven't watched the doc, so I just can't. Maybe one day I will, but so forgive me if I'm repeating something, but wrestling really filled that void for me. And I'm beyond grateful for that because it's very different than football, but it gave me the same sense of community, of that brotherhood, that locker room, of something that I could work at, and me still being an athlete. And I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, it's an extremely hard time. And I didn't realize, I felt very alone in the moment, but the more conversations I had with others who played ball, and, that was my first love. The very first thing that captured my imagination like that I thought, that's what I'm going to be. And nothing is going to stop me from being that. And I felt like I had overcome so many things. I didn't play an ounce of football I played youth football and then played no football in middle school or high school until my senior year. And it's very, very hard and difficult to get a scholarship at a major school. And somehow I overcame all that, getting the scholarship. So I felt like this is my destiny. I'm on the path. And to see it all kind of fall away was very, very hard. But man, wrestling saved me in so many ways.
What was the relationship with Dusty like?
Dusty was great. I think Dusty was probably a bit closer with others than he was with me, but he was always very complimentary of me. And it went from me being a fan and like, oh, that's Dusty Rhodes when I first walked in 2009, to it's weird to look back and just have this very casual, friendly relationship with Dusty, where he's just there all the time. You know, it's not like he's on a pedestal, he's there, he's in the office, and we get to talk to him and trade jokes with him. And
so did you have someone else that was more like your person, someone who took that special interest in you more? Was it Dr. Tom?
I would say so many people. I definitely have to give Dusty credit too, because he definitely helped me with my promos and loosening up too. But I would say of anyone, I'd say Doc. Norman was there too, but Doc was the one who was there with us for hours every day, who was extremely patient with me, who had, I could tell the frustration when I had no idea how to sell and I was learning to sell, and I would just see him like fighting that urge to cuss me out. But I really appreciate it. And there were a few times too where he's not the most warm at times, as far as like, he's not going to necessarily take you aside every day and hold your hand and give you a hug and a kiss. But the few times that Doc did pull me aside and said, hey, you're on the right path and the office likes you, like those words were ones that saved me. Because it's so interesting looking back at FCW, because it really feels like an island. It's so different from NXT where fans are so connected.
Yeah. Oh, it must be completely different. Like it's kind of cool actually, because you guys still had the opportunity to really feel like indie dudes, like really.
Yeah. Well, what I liked about it is that when I got called up, I had a bit of a mystique because no one knew who I was. And I think as much as I enjoy NXT, I think one of the issues is when people come up from NXT, there's the expectation that they'll be used in a similar way.
Correct.
They'll have the same presentation. And oftentimes I almost feel, not that people burn out, but almost like you can have your best run in NXT and people think that it's just supposed to go in this very, very linear way. Right. You go straight from NXT, and if you were hot in NXT, then you're going to keep getting hotter and hotter in the main. But it don't
work that way. It just
doesn't.
There's not enough spots.
Really, it hasn't ever. Like Adam Rose was the hottest thing in NXT for a while, and then he got on the main. He was hot for a little while, and fans just didn't embrace it the same way.
Right, and then you look at an Elias who like had a minimal role in NXT, and he's found a way to constantly be involved in things throughout his entire run in WWE. And we talk about all the time, and I'm not the biggest NXT person, but like we talk about this all the time. Where do you go with Gargano and Ciampa and these guys who have already been big there for a long time? It's hard. You don't have a place for everybody. They're not going to all show up and get the billing that they quote unquote deserve. Whereas when you come from FCW, you're complete nobodies.
Right.
You get an opportunity to start over fresh and then build from there.
Yeah. But I also don't know if the main roster needs to be a destination for everyone.
It doesn't.
Like, I think Gargano and Ciampa might be guys who are NXT guys. And that doesn't have to be with a frown or with any disdain. It doesn't have to be said. It can be like, this is our brand. It's on national TV, man. It's not just on the network. Not saying that the programming on the network is a problem, but it's on national TV. And if those guys feel like that's their home and that brand best suits them, there are a lot of people who will tell you my favorite WWE brand is NXT. For sure. And so I don't want there to be like attached. There shouldn't be any shame attached to being an NXT guy. I don't think it necessarily has to be. And it's just interesting that NXT isn't quite developmental anymore.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
I've said that too. Fans view, like, people go back to NXT and fans look at that as a demotion. And I'm just like, they travel less. It's probably more comfortable for them. They probably want this. It's not necessarily a demotion for somebody to go back to NXT,
Not, and also if you're really into wrestling, if like you're part of it that you want to perform at is being a wrestler, that is more important to you than everything else that comes with that, it may be the better fit. That's a really good point. I appreciate looking at it like that. What was the early run with Dolph and AJ like? Did you enjoy that? Were you just trying to get your footing and don't even know what the hell was going on? How do you look back on that time?
No, it was great. It was, my only reservation was I I didn't like that I had to be this silent, emotionless bodyguard heater who never spoke. It was such a contrast because we acted like NXT and the main roster were two different universes. Because at the time I was NXT champion, but I never had my NXT title on the main roster. I never held it. I never walked out with it. And I would go out and be this vibrant baby face with the 5 count as champion, getting people involved. And then I would go on the road and I do these live events and I would stand there and I would barely move.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
It is. And it's one of those things where I would check with the office and the bosses and say, like, what do you, this is what you want? Are you sure? And that's what they wanted. So that's what I did. And so that to me was, that was the difficulty. But, it was, looking back, it was a great opportunity for me to learn. I felt like I was ready when I came up, but I was still only 3 years into the business. And I wasn't one of these prodigies where I look around, man, I see people who are like 22, 23, men and women who are incredible, who can cut promos, who have great looks, who know what they're doing. And I'm blown away. For me, it wasn't that. I didn't instantly pick it up. So I still needed to grow and I still needed to be comfortable being on the main roster too. A big thing for me too, was just getting over that walking on eggshells feeling of, oh man, I'm in the ring with John Cena or there's Kane and I don't want to hurt them. So that's the biggest thing too, is me still kind of having that fear of performing. I was still too inhibited. And I was, the nice thing with that role of being with Dolph and AJ is it allowed me to get my feet wet slowly, to dip my toe in, to learn. I'm with Dolph, who's incredible. I'm with AJ, who was red hot at the time. And they're having live events. They did an MSG cage match in I think that Christmas loop of 2012, and with Cena in the main event. And I'm getting to be there to hear them, to hear the crowd, to hear how the crowd goes bananas when Cena comes out, to hear them put matches together. So it's a great learning experience. I'm traveling at the time for a while. I was with Dolph and AJ. We traveled together and just would talk about ideas. So it was a really great learning experience to learn from some of the best of the industry.
And to your point, you got to have physical interactions with people without having to do like that much. Sorry, SUG, but I was just thinking about that because I saw how your first thing you ever did was attack John Cena. But even in doing that, it's quick and you're not having to do 15 minutes with John Cena, but you get to get the rub and have the little moment. Sorry, SUG, what were you saying?
I was going to talk about that John Cena moment too. Like, John Cena is the first guy you touch when you come on the main roster, but you talk about seeing these prodigies, there's that footage of you just setting like a world record bench press with Roman spotting you of all people. And John Cena's the one who sort of sees you and like, this dude's going to be a star. So is there anybody now that you have sort of become like an elder statesman? Like you said, you see so many young prodigies. Now that you're in like the Cena roles, who do you have your eye on that, like if you could name names of people you're excited to see get to where you are?
Ooh, man, I always feel weird. It's bizarre. I talked to Kofi and Woods about this at times too, because I felt like the young guy for a long time. And I'm just a guy and we're messing around. And then you get deeper and deeper into your tenure here and you look around at the roster and think, man, are we the OGs now? This is bizarre. I don't know if I am, but I kind of am, I've been around for a little bit. So I'm not really one, I often feel like I'm not the one to be giving advice. So I never do. But if someone comes up to me and asks me, then, we'll talk. I'll say, from a backstage standpoint, I've talked to Uha, to Apollo, and, we talk. It's been cool to see his growth. And just so I don't get in trouble, there are people from outside companies I'll probably text you about later so I don't get in trouble. But there are people from elsewhere that I do have good relationships with. And it's so bizarre for someone to say, hey, I'm a fan of your work, or even like I watched you when I was coming up, because I don't feel like I'm that old at 35, but I guess I've been around for a little bit. But I'm now really enjoying that role of being able to give back a little bit or give advice or just share my story. Like, I'm not saying I know the best route, but I think our story, the New Day story, is very relatable for people who are trying to get off the ground. Like, when I go back to 2014, and I always want to remember where I came from and the origins, and remember how hard it was in 2014 and how discarded we were as talent. And I often like talking to people who are at the same point of trying to figure out, how do I jump to a new gimmick? How do I have this heel turn go the right way?
And so many people have that experience. It's not like you guys were alone.
No, and it was hard, man. Like you think of the New Day now, and you think of all of our successes, and Kofi being world champion, and the 483-day title reign. But if you look back to the summer of 2014, I am still amazed that we ever even got on TV together. Our first incarnation, when Woods comes out in that white and red suit, and it took months and months and months of cutting our own promos. We would spend time at live events shooting our own little vignettes and showing them to the office and being told, make this tweak. We'd come back, we'd make the tweak, and no, that's not what we want. We'd come back and say, hey, give us a whole new idea. So that's the biggest. I think there are other people who can lend you advice about how to work or maybe character stuff, but I can share the story of what it is like to get an idea off the ground when no one wants this idea to happen. And that's something that I enjoy.
And you guys handle fan rejection probably better than any, and Pete, you could speak to this too, anybody I think I've seen in all my years watching wrestling. Because like the fans did not want the New Day on their screens for a long time.
But you know what helped us is people weren't ambivalent, and that we were good. As long they can hate you, even when they're supposed to cheer you, if they hate you, you can use that. If they're cheering you when they're supposed to boo you, you can use that. But when it's crickets, when you come out, that's when you really need to start worrying. So we took that hate and we said, okay, we were hot about it because we knew we were supposed to be babyfaces. We were supposed to be cheered, but we said, we can use this. And we kept saying to the old man, you hear those people, you hear them booing. We'd go out another night. You'd hear the loud New Day sucks chants. And that was never our intention, but this is where we're at. We can use it. Let's turn. Let us turn. And as soon as they let us turn and they kind of took off, they let some of those reins go. They let some of those restrictions go and let us kind of do us. We were good. We were good and it got off the ground. But that's the hard part, is getting that trust. It's very rare. And I get it, man. It's we always say the mantra is an audience of one. As much as you want to get over with the people, with the fans, and to be respected by your peers, if one man doesn't like you, it's going to be very hard for you to make it in this company. So we were very fortunate, but we also busted our asses to keep getting over that hump. And we believed in our trio more than anything. We trusted in ourselves. And that's one of the things I feel like our bond was really forged through the fire, through the hard times, is we just said, we're not going to let them divide us. We're not going to, like, we had so many people bury us, so many important people bury us, and it should have been over for us. But we just said, like, this is it. We're going to sink or swim on our own merits. And this is our last pitch, and we're going to go all in on it.
What was that like for Kofi? Because at that point, he's like beloved, could do no wrong. Not to the extent of Kofi Mania, but I mean, what was that like for him getting that reaction after being in the spot?
He'd always at least gotten a pleasant reaction. Even if,
right.
Even if it was a mid-card pleasant reaction, it was a nice reaction.
Well, Kofi had wanted to be a heel for quite some time, but he was the guy who they saw as like the Ricky Steamboat, the perennial babyface who will never turn. He's always the guy we cheer for. But, Kofi, I didn't realize this at the time until he told us, but he was thinking about retiring. He was at a point in his career where, you just get to that point where you're just stuck. You're in this one lane. This is how they see you. And
Royal
you don't
Rumble,
really get an opportunity.
Hit your Royal Rumble spots.
Yeah.
Come down. Yeah. He had the moment with Randy Orton that was cool, but besides that, it's kind of probably what just felt like repeat.
Yeah, but that moment with Randy wasn't what, 09?
Yeah.
10?
Yeah.
And this is 2014, so it's a while where Kofi could have still done what he was doing and been around for a while, but he didn't just want to be a utility guy. He wasn't having fun just being there, just getting a paycheck. And so there was no point where Kofi, at least he never voiced it. I don't think there was ever a time where he's like, all right, I don't really need this. I'm just going to go back to doing what I was doing. He never had that feeling. We were all in on it. All three of us were all in on it. Same for me, man. I was this close to being sent back down to NXT or being fired. I could feel it. I knew it because there was no real plans for me. And same thing with Woods, who had one of the worst debuts in WWE history. Just an awful one where R-Truth comes out and then there's this guy trailing him for a little bit. And then he eventually says, oh, yeah, it's Xavier Woods. And then he proceeded to get beat up by Brodus and company for the next month. And then I think he had a program with Rusev where, oh yeah, he had a handicap match. I want to say it was Extreme Rules with Rusev. It was R-Truth and Woods, and Rusev just like demolishes him, Woods, like real quick at the beginning, and proceeds to have the rest of the match with Truth. So Woods was in dire straits too. We just all felt like this is our last, this is it. If this doesn't work, then hey, this might be it for us. So we went all in on it.
Let's say, for example, you were involved in a professional wrestling match. Mm-hmm. And the story said that you were supposed to run out to the ring and save a friend of yours, Kofi or Xavier. And if you didn't save them in a certain amount of time, the ring was going to explode. And you get down there and you cover this person with all your heart and all your life protecting them. And 3 solo sparklers go on. What would you do? Just hypothetically speaking, what would you do?
Don't do this. What are you trying to do? By the way, you know damn well I got friends over there.
No, me too. I'm serious though, because I think it was a very funny situation. It's a good thing to talk about. But I'd have, among my different feelings about this week, one of the things I have is a great respect for Eddie Kingston's professionalism. Like that was one of the things I sort of took, was like, he was like, this is what we're doing. I'm doing it. But it's no doubt a hard spot. No,
it is. He was put in a difficult position. I will say that. If you can't see what's going on around you, if your head is down, what are you supposed to do?
That's a good point too.
Like what
about that. He might have thought it was awesome.
Yeah, you don't know. I don't know.
No, that's a thought I didn't even.
No, I didn't think about it either.
Yeah, it's not like he looked up and saw. It's not like there's not really much room to improvise if you don't know what's going on around you.
But it's facts though.
Like, so Mox could see probably. Mox is looking up. But that's why he got up afterwards, was like, yo, what the hell was that? But you're right. Eddie's facing the ground. He doesn't even know what the hell's going on. He probably was like, yo, that was dope. Let me take a look around out here. And having no idea. I was just curious though, because I did feel for him. I was like, man, that's a tough spot. And I just think I was going to ask you, the follow-up to that is, because Eddie Kingston's a name that pops into my mind. What talent is out there that's never worked in WWE that you would love to get to see have a run on your side of town?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I probably, for my own sake, probably can't name anyone from, that company. But, man, I am a big fan of Shingo Takagi in New Japan. I think he's incredible. I don't know if you watch a lot of New Japan.
I've never seen Shingo Takagi.
No, I haven't seen him.
Yeah, he's the man. Check some Shingo. I like him because he's nice. He's not massive, but he's big enough to, like, his power stuff is believable, and he moves real well. I don't know. I find him charismatic, and I just really enjoy watching him. So check out some Shingo.
One thing you said earlier that I wanted to go back to for 1 second. You talked about how it was hard for you. You didn't want to hurt anyone. Is it hard when you're a new guy, but you're big? Everyone knows that you can lift, that you're strong. Does that ever create situations where there are expectations that you're supposed to do something with a big guy, a Kane, a Cena, whoever, people who are big ass dudes, that you're like, damn, yeah, I can physically do this, but I'm new and I really don't want to do this. This is scary.
No, I think the biggest thing is there was just such a big stigma about hurting guys when you're in FCW is you don't want to hurt the top guys. Like, you can lay it in a little bit more with mid-card guys, but all it takes is the wrong person, especially if you're new and you just came up and you potato a top guy, and now it can be all over for you. They can say, I don't want to work with him, send him back down. And that could be it. So it's not necessarily like, hey, there are things that I don't want to do. Because I think we had that. My very first match on the main roster was at WrestleMania in New York. It was me and Dolph against Team Hell No, Brian and Kane. And they had me do, like, one of the things, we just want, like, one display of strength. And I gave Kane, just picked him up and gave him the, why am I blanking on the name? The backbreakers, the triple backbreakers. So they were cool. They wanted me to look strong and impressive. But so it's not so much that, it's not potatoing top guys. And now it's at a certain point where 8 years in, if I were to do that with, like, a Cena level or a Randy level, there's a certain level of rapport where I could apologize. It's cool. But when you're brand new and they don't know you and you don't have that you're not an indie darling either, it's a bit more difficult.
we always have, you're sort of the standard for great guys. And we talk about people who are great guys. I believe actually we have some exciting news, SGG, about Dipperstein. He wants to get into the power ranking business when it comes to great guys. And one person that we could literally name the power rankings after would be you. Everyone regards you as a great guy, not just us. Who's a, not Kofi, not Xavier, not someone we know that you have a relationship with. Who's someone in WWE who you think is just a great guy yourself?
Rey Mysterio has got to be one of the nicest, not even just like the nicest man in wrestling, but just one of the nicest humans I've ever met. Same thing, like when I met him a decade ago, he's just been the same guy. So I would definitely say Rey is just an incredibly sweet human being.
Well, and he must be. Look at all the Louis Vuitton and Gucci that his family's wearing on TV every week. I mean, come on.
Look, he's earned every dollar of it. Don't you dare shame that man.
I wish
we're jealous.
Rey Mysterio.
That's jealousy.
I want a Louis Vuitton jacket every week on TV.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Dominic seems like a very sweet kid too in limited interaction.
Yeah, I like Dom a lot. I mean, you're backstage. You know how it is. Yeah, Dom's a good. I was going to call him a good kid, and then I felt like it aged me. I can't do that. Nah.
It ages you. What are you?
Yeah.
Are you? You're 33?
35, man.
35? Yeah. And Dominic's what? 22?
Around there.
Yeah. Good kid.
Yeah.
Good kid.
He's a kid. You're allowed to say it. Doesn't age you that much. He is a kid.
I guess, but no, their family's awesome, man. So yeah, let's go with Rey. But I will say, for the most part, man, our locker room is so much better than when I first came in, as far as personalities and people not being dicks, man. It was a different time around like 2009, 2010. Just people just are cooler, you know. It's more of a tight-knit community, I think.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of jackasses, to be honest. Not particularly. Sorry, SG, what's up?
I was gonna say, speaking of great guys, and you've been cautious about mentioning people from the other company, but I don't think you'll catch any flack for just speaking a little bit to the legacy of like Broadie Lee and what
never,
he means
man.
to you and just the whole wrestling community. Because I think people, as fans, we see what happens on TV, and we don't realize just how deep and far-reaching these relationships people are. And I think people got a glimpse of it with Broadie, but I just don't think people understand really the legacy that he's leaving behind
and the relationship and how that formed too.
Yeah, that's my guy, man. That's my guy. So I can't remember exactly why or when we got real close, but it was a few years ago, and just him and his family. He's got I'm not even a big kid person, but he has the best kids, man. His son Broadie and his other son Nolan are just incredible kids, and his wife is incredible. Just the picture of strength. She's hilarious. Broadie was someone I just talked to every day. And now there's so many times where I want to text him. That's my first instinct, is to text Broadie. And it's that reflex of, I can't. Just about so many facets of life. And he was really, I think one of the things that really helped me was hearing the outpouring of love and affection for this man, because sometimes you have a friend and you love him, but hey, he's kind of a dick, or I've seen him do something shady. I love with Broadie, I never had to lie about his character. I never had to lie about the kind of man he was. His losses is something that's a void I'll never be able to fill. We spent a lot of time talking about life, about MMA, about his kids. He was so proud of his kids. He was so energized by being a father. And, he moved to Tampa a few years ago. And so he lived like 15 minutes from me. And even when he left the company, I still saw him all the time. Even when we didn't plan to, we'd be at the gym at the same time. And I was like, it sounds corny, but I would light up anytime I saw him, even though we'd be texting and talking. Anytime I was at the gym and I saw him, I just couldn't wait to run over and hug him, dab him up, talk. We'd spend 15, 20 minutes just talking. And I couldn't ask for a better friend. And he was not only just an incredible pro wrestler, but he was an even better man. And that's a loss that that I'll never forget. You know, I can't say enough good things about him, and it still doesn't feel real in many ways. You know, I keep thinking he's just away for a bit. But yeah, I miss him. I miss him every day. I miss him dearly. I'll always miss him, and I'm grateful to have known him and to have loved him, and just it's my guy forever.
I think everyone will like the outpouring of love for Broadie Lee is such that it almost makes it like a, and this may sound cheesy, but I actually think it's a sort of nice thought. Man, you should live your life in a way where the goal would be that people talk about you when you're gone the way they talked about Broadie Lee. That would be a sign of a life well lived. You know, I didn't know Broadie Lee at all, which is wild at all. So I had this very weird mixed thing of profound sadness for people I care about who know him so well, yourself, Emilio. It's like a lot of people who really loved him. And then I also felt like this incredible sense of extra sadness and jealousy that I didn't get to know this person who sounds just like every account of him is just like just the most wonderful ray of sunshine in people's lives. So I love seeing the way you rep for him. You guys really have kept it up too, you know, like, and listen, it's one of those things where everyone's outpouring felt so authentic. You know, sometimes people pass and they're like, oh, here comes everyone's post about how they were so tight with this person. And in the case of Broadie Lee, you're like, yo, everyone really was close with this person. Like they loved this man, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that was nice to see.
Yeah. And there's so many stories too of him like buying gear for people or things like, you know, when Kaz had to deal with his miscarriage and he said Broadie talked to him for hours on the phone because it's something that he had dealt with his wife, with Amanda. And he was a guy who would just kind of be there for you, but he was still a ball buster. He had this like gruff persona, so he didn't walk around like a saint, which is I think why I loved him even more is because he was one of the boys and he was a pro wrestler and like by every definition of that term, but under all that exterior was just a really sweet man.
Yeah, rest in peace to the great Broadie Lee. Hey, Big E, thank you for spending time with us. You can just go on Google and type in Our Heroes Rock. And boom, look, I got you up. You're getting close, bro. You already at 97.5.
I appreciate you.
The Cheap Heat universe about to put you over the top, my guy. We got you.
Bless you all.
And if you need, if at any point you need a voice for a white guy in the cartoon, and I can be evil, but like with limitations. Like I'm not going to be Bull Connor, you know, if it's like sort of a generic, if it's like a generic white character, you know, I'll do it. I'll just let me know.
I feel wrong for laughing at that Bull Connor joke, but well done.
I will see you in a week and a half. I look forward to it.
Beautiful.
Biggie,
Thanks for having me, man. Thank you both, man. For real.
Peace, yo.
Appreciate you.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen, the great
Great guy.
He's a great guy. As you know, his name is Big E.